6:45 a.m. This is the news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, edited by Danushka Madhavala, read by Sandhi Thavam. The inaugural meeting of the National Council will be held today. The SLFP, SJB and the JVP will not participate in the National Council. Japan is willing to further strengthen the bilateral relations with Sri Lanka. The President and the Indian Premier discuss Sri Lanka's economic crisis in Tokyo. The Prime Minister invites French investors to invest in new areas. In foreign news, Hurricane Ian makes landfall and brings force winds to Florida coast. In sports, Pakistan beat England to take 3-2 T20 series lead. The inaugural meeting of the National Council is scheduled to be held today under the patronage of the Speaker of Parliament, Mahinda Abebewardene. The meeting will commence at 10:30 a.m. in Parliament. The Speaker announced to Parliament on the 23rd of this month the list of the members of Parliament who have been nominated for the National Council, which was established as per the proposal of Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena. The National Council consists of members representing Parliament from the respective political parties. The chairman of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, former President Maithripala Sirisena, said the Freedom Party will not join the National Council. The former president said the president should have appointed the National Council before appointing the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, and that he should have appointed the National Council first and then discussed with it and made the relevant appointments. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa has said that he will not attend the meeting. He said that his party will later decide whether they will attend the National Council. The JVP has also said that they will not attend the National Council today. President Ranil Wickremesinghe met the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida at the Akasaka Palace in Tokyo yesterday. The Japanese Prime Minister warmly welcomed President Wickremesinghe and extended his best wishes on his appointment to the office of President. They held discussions on further strengthening relations between the two countries. Prime Minister Kishida conveyed his gratitude to President Wickremesinghe's participation in the state funeral. President Wickremesinghe has said that he is still in shock, recalling that he has had a close conversation with the former Prime Minister Abe when he served as Prime Minister and expressed his sincere condolences on his demise. Prime Minister Kishida stated that in order to highlight the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Japan and Sri Lanka, Japan is willing to further strengthen the bilateral relations with Sri Lanka to implement Japan's vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific. Meanwhile, President Ranil Wickremesinghe called on His Majesty Emperor Naruhito at the Imperial Palace, his official residence in Tokyo, where he was warmly welcomed. After concluding his visit to Japan, President Wickremesinghe has arrived in the Philippines to preside over the meeting of the governors of the Asian Development Bank. During his visit to the Philippines, the President will hold discussions with the President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., and the President of the Asian Development Bank, Masatsugu Asakawa. President Ranil Wickremesinghe and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi discussed Sri Lanka's debt restructuring when the two held informal discussions in Tokyo on the sidelines of the funeral of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Sources present at the discussion said that during the meeting, which lasted for around 10 minutes, the Indian Prime Minister congratulated Wickremesinghe on his presidency and also discussed Sri Lanka's present economic crisis. Modi and Wickremesinghe discussed Sri Lanka's debt restructuring, and Modi also inquired on Sri Lanka's talks with the International Monetary Fund and the current status of the talks. After being briefed by Wickremesinghe, the Sri Lankan president requested for more Indian investments, to which the Indian premier has responded positively, saying India would increase its investments in Sri Lanka to assist the country out of the economic crisis. You're listening to the news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena said French investors should enter into new areas of investment such as fisheries, agriculture, information technology, renewable energy, electronics and tourism. This was stated when the outgoing French ambassador Eric Louverture paid a farewell call on him at the Prime Minister's office in Colombo recently. Ambassador Louverture said Sri Lanka has vast potential in information technology, tourism and agriculture, and France will undertake more projects once the global economic situation gets over the current difficult phase. He said that fisheries development has the potential of bringing in of foreign exchange income as there is a demand for fish products in Europe and other markets. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister instructed officials to conduct an impartial inquiry into the fire that broke out at Kajimavatta in Mutual. While attending the Colombo District Coordinating Committee meeting, the Prime Minister directed them to provide the report within 1 week. V. N. Madhyalagan Sollum Sedigal, a reference book authored by V. N. Madhyalagan, former Deputy Director General of the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, has been gracefully approved by the University of Jaffna as one of the textbooks of reference for media studies graduate students. Professor Raghuram, head of the Department, Faculty of Media Studies of the University of Jaffna, has accepted the book titled V. N. Madhyalagan Sollum Sedigal in its undergraduate syllabus for radio production and presentation through the lesson unit CMC 32013 for general degree and CMCH 31023P for the honours degree. And with that, we conclude local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The Communications Department of Parliament said an amendment has been proposed by a committee in Parliament to the Children and Young Persons Ordinance to consider the age of a person who shall be a child be raised from 16 to 18 years. The proposal has been made at the Select Committee of Parliament to look into and report to Parliament its recommendations to ensure gender equity and equality under Committee Chairperson Sudashni Fernando Pulle. Accordingly, the amendments proposed to omit the reference to young persons and rename the principal enactment as the Children's Ordinance and came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to Watchlight, the Excise Department has introduced a mobile app to verify the authenticity of liquor in the retail market. After scanning the sticker pasted on the cap of the liquor bottle with a mobile phone, customers can know the date of manufacture, the alcohol content, and information about the manufacturer. If the liquor bottle is fake, customers can inform the investigation unit of the Excise Department using the app, and it came to you in Watchlight. On to a bulletin of world news making headlines. Hurricane Ian makes landfall and brings force winds to Florida coast. West shows up Nord Stream pipeline security, blaming Russia's sabotage. 13 people have been killed in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Hurricane Ian had made landfall in southwestern Florida, authorities said, as the massive storm lashed the U.S. state's Gulf Coast with powerful winds and heavy rainfall. The extremely dangerous Category 4 storm made landfall shortly after 3 p.m. yesterday near Cayo Costa, the U.S. National Hurricane Center said, bringing sustained winds of about 240 kilometers per hour. The storm's wind speeds put in just shy of a Category 5 designation on the Saffir-Simpson scale, the most severe classification for storms, though Ian was expected to weaken a notch after coming ashore, according to the NHC. Mandatory evacuation orders had been issued in a dozen coastal Florida counties, with voluntary evacuations recommended in several areas, according to the state's emergency officials. One of the most powerful storms to hit the United States in recent years, Ian brought strong winds and rain to Florida's heavily populated Gulf Coast, where the Naples to Sarasota region was at the highest risk of a devastating storm surge. European countries say they will ramp up security around oil and gas installations after the suspected sabotage of 2 major pipelines. The EU, US and NATO have suggested damage to the pipelines between Russia and Germany were deliberate, but have not blamed Russia directly. Russia has said it was not involved and asked if the US was instead. Russia has previously been accused of using gas supplies as a weapon against the West over its support for Ukraine. The leaks on the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines were discovered on Monday and Tuesday. Neither pipeline was operating at the time, as the Nord Stream 2 project was abandoned when Russia invaded Ukraine, and Russia shut down Nord Stream 1 in September, citing a need for maintenance. 13 people have been killed in Iraq's Kurdistan region, officials say, as Iran launched missiles and armed drones at what it said were bases of Iranian Kurdish opposition groups. A pregnant woman was reportedly among those who died in the strikes. Iran's Islamic Revolution Guard Corps said it hit separatist terrorists who had supported recent riots. Anti-government protests have swept across Iran since the death in custody of a Kurdish woman there 12 days ago. Kurdish human rights group Hengo said on Monday that 18 Kurdish protesters had been killed by security forces, 899 others injured, and more than 1,000 arrested as Iranian authorities sought to suppress the dissent in the region and elsewhere. Back to the headlines of the world news. Hurricane Ian makes landfall, brings force winds to Florida coast. West shows up Nord Stream pipeline security, blaming Russia sabotage. And 13 people have been killed in Iraq's Kurdistan region. That concludes this bulletin of world news, and on to development news. Sri Lanka's earnings for the merchandise exports exceeded $1 billion for the fourth consecutive month in July 2022, as revenue from exports increased by 10.24% year-on-year to $1.214 billion in the month, mainly due to the increase in earnings from export of apparel and textiles. The EDB chairman, Suresh D. Dimel, congratulated the exporters for their great effort to increase foreign exchange earnings for Sri Lanka during this critical period. He also wished to thank the staff of the EDB and other supporting agencies for their untiring support to facilitate exports under highly disruptive circumstances. That came to you in development news. We take a look at sports news next.
Sports News is brought to you by...
With many values that bind us beyond the transaction, we are Sampath Bank. We present your future.
Pakistan took a 3-2 lead in their 2020 series against England with a 6-run victory in low-scoring match in Lahore. Chasing just 146 for the win, England never recovered from a poor start in the power play that saw them reduced to 31 for 3 inside 5 overs. A defiant knock from captain Moeen Ali, who ended unbeaten on 51, left England needing 15 runs off the last over, but some superb death bowling from debutant Amir Jamal saw them fall just short on 139 for 7. Earlier, England's fast bowler Mark Wood took 3 for 20 as Pakistan were bowled out for 145 after 19 overs. Mohammad Rizwan, the only batter to offer resistance with 63 from 46 deliveries. The penultimate game of the 7-match series takes place on Friday again in Lahore. That's sports news. Business news up next.
The fastest way to earn the highest interest from NSB, now extended till the 30th of September just for you. Your short-term deposits receive an attractive interest rate of 20% in 3 months and 22% in 7 months. Visit a bank branch or a main postal office today. NSB, the only bank with 100% government guarantee.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The State Minister of Finance, Ranjit Pisiyambalapitiya, has requested the heads of state banks to provide maximum relief to entrepreneurs who have taken loans while protecting the banking system in the face of the ongoing economic crisis. Meeting with the heads of state banks on Tuesday, the minister pointed out that some entrepreneurs have been affected in the situation where banks have increased their interest rates in order to protect liquidity. He emphasized that even though it is necessary to take that step to protect the banking system, it is also extremely important to protect the businessmen. That's business news, economic news up next.
Business News, sponsored by...
The fastest way to earn the highest interest from NSB, now extended till the 30th of September just for you. Your short-term deposits receive an attractive interest rate of 20% in 3 months and 22% in 7 months. Visit a bank branch or a main postal office today. NSB, the only bank with 100% government guarantee.
Economic News, courtesy of...
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
The UK government will not abandon its mini-budget despite the Bank of England having to step in amid market turmoil, a Treasury Minister has said. Labour called for the tax-cutting measures to be ditched after they sparked a fall in the pound and a surge in borrowing costs. Government departments also being asked to find spending cuts. Treasury Minister Andrew Griffith said the government's proposals were the right plans to grow the UK economy. He claimed every major economy is dealing with exactly the same issues and said The impact of Putin's war in Ukraine is cascading through things like the cost of energy, some of the supply side implications of that. The value of the pound dropped to $1.05 on Wednesday after the Bank of England stepped in to stabilize the economy before later rallying to about $1.08. That's economic news.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
On to the weather report. The Met Department says that Shah Ziloka at times in the Sabragamo province and in the Kandy and Nuwara districts. Several spells of Shah Ziloka in the western and northwestern provinces and in the Gaul and Martara districts. Showers with under Shah Ziloka at several places in the Uva province and in the Ampara and Batikla districts during the evening or night. To conclude this bulletin of news, a recap of the headlines. The inaugural meeting of the National Council is scheduled to be held today. The SLFP, SJB and the JVP will not participate in the National Council. Japan is willing to further strengthen the bilateral relations with Sri Lanka. The President and the Indian Premier discuss Sri Lanka's economic crisis in Tokyo. The Prime Minister invites French investors to invest in new areas. Hurricane Ian makes landfall, brings force winds to Florida coast. And Pakistan beat England to take 3-2 T20 series lead. With that, we conclude this morning's news broadcast.